The Xylar sector, a swirling nebula of bioluminescent plankton and treacherous asteroid fields. It was a place where the laws of physics seemed more like suggestions, and where the dominant species, the Krill, ruled with an iron fin. Imagine, if you will, a civilization of sentient, militaristic goldfish, 6 feet tall, clad in bioengineered armor, and utterly devoid of a sense of humor. That was the Krill. Their cities, colossal structures of coral and shimmering alloys, pulsed with the rhythmic beat of their underwater metropolises. Every movement was precise, every utterance a carefully calculated strategy. Emotions were inefficient. War was their art form, conquest their morning exercise, and maintaining the delicate balance of power in the Xylar sector, their obsession. And then there was Jen. How she ended up in the Xylar sector was a story best left for another time, involving a faulty teleporter, a mislabeled crate of space bananas, and a series of unfortunate navigational errors. What mattered was that she was here. Jen, a human of unremarkable height, average build, and an uncanny ability to find the humor in even the most dire situations, was an anomaly in the Krill's perfectly ordered universe. Picture her, cargo pants, a faded t-shirt bearing the legend, "I need more space," and a perpetually bemused expression. The Krill, a species that viewed efficiency as the highest virtue, found Jen baffling. Her tendency to slouch, her inappropriate jokes, what even was sarcasm, and her general air of not taking anything seriously were deeply unsettling to them. They couldn't quite decide if she was a threat, an idiot, or some combination of the two. Her arrival had been met with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The Krill, after all, were meticulous record keepers. They had catalogued every asteroid, every gas cloud, every fluctuation in the sector's gravitational field. But Jen? She was a variable they couldn't compute. Subject, human, read the official Krill report. Observed behavior, illogical. Apparent purpose, undetermined. Threat level, unknown, but potentially disruptive to established order. Their first encounter had set the tone. Jen, upon being greeted by a Krill honor guard, a phalanx of bio-armored goldfish wielding energy rifles, had simply blinked and said, "Well, aren't you guys a sight for sore eyes? You wouldn't happen to have a decent coffee machine around. Here, would you?" The Krill, trained to respond to threats with lethal force, had merely stared back, their gills fluttering in confusion. Coffee? What strategic value could this coffee possibly possess? This was Jen's world now. A world of rigid protocols, humorless warriors, and technology so advanced it made her head spin. And she, in turn, was about to turn their world upside down, one sarcastic comment and one modified alien device at a time. The stage was set. The players were in place. And the Xylar sector was about to learn that the most disruptive force in the universe wasn't a supernova or a rogue black hole, but a single coffee-deprived human with a penchant for tinkering. Jen's first major faux pas involved personal space. The Krill, accustomed to the vastness of the ocean, maintained a bubble of personal space roughly equivalent to the size of a small yacht. Jen, hailing from the crowded streets of, well, Earth, had a slightly different concept. During a formal briefing with Grand Admiral Krill, the highest-ranking officer in the Xylar sector fleet, Jen had leaned in to get a better look at a holographic display, inadvertently invading the Admiral's bubble. The effect was immediate. The Admiral recoiled as if she'd been stung, her bio-armor whirring in protest. The surrounding guards raised their energy rifles, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Apologies," Jen mumbled, completely oblivious to the near-existential crisis she had just triggered. "Just wanted to see what that squiggly line was doing." The Krill equivalent of an emergency alert blared through the station. Then there was the matter of greetings. Krill greetings were elaborate ritualistic affairs involving a series of precise fin movements, bioluminescent flashes, and the recitation of one's lineage going back several generations. Jen, on the other hand, favored a simple, "Hey, what's up?" accompanied by a casual wave. This was interpreted as either extreme disrespect or a declaration of war, depending on the Krill you asked. One unfortunate incident involved Jen attempting to offer a fist bump to a Krill science officer. The officer, unfamiliar with this Earth custom, interpreted it as an aggressive gesture and responded by activating his personal defense shield, which promptly knocked Jen off her feet. "Note to self," Jen muttered, dusting herself off. "Avoid physical contact. These guys are touchy." Perhaps the most bewildering aspect of Jen's behavior, from the Krill perspective, was her apparent lack of respect for authority. The Krill hierarchy was rigid, unquestionable, and enforced with ruthless efficiency. Jen, however, seemed incapable of taking anyone seriously, regardless of their rank. She addressed Grand Admiral Krill as Krilly, referred to the chief science officer as Doc, and had even been overheard calling the supreme commander of the Xylar sector fleet Big Fish. The Krill were unsure whether this was an act of deliberate insubordination or simply a sign of profound mental deficiency. The confusion only deepened when Jen began questioning Krill customs. "Why do you guys always swim in formation?" she asked a group of Krill soldiers. "Doesn't that get super boring?" The soldiers, trained to obey orders without question, could only stare back in stunned silence. One of them fainted. Her attempts at humor were equally disastrous. Jen, upon learning that the Krill considered war a form of artistic expression, had quipped, "So, you're saying you guys are like performance artists? I've seen better interpretive dance at a toddler's birthday party." The Krill, who had no concept of irony, sarcasm, or toddlers' birthday parties, were utterly bewildered. The only consensus was that Jen was, without a doubt, the strangest being they had ever encountered, and the most unpredictable. But amidst all the cultural clashes and bewildering misunderstandings, one thing stood out: Jen's peculiar interest in the Krill's most prized possession, the Tidal Disrupter. The Tidal Disrupter wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of Krill power, a testament to their mastery over the ocean's raw force. This device, housed in a massive underwater fortress, was capable of generating colossal tidal waves that could obliterate entire fleets and reshape coastlines with a single pulse. To the Krill, the Tidal Disrupter represented the pinnacle of their technological achievement and the cornerstone of their military dominance. It was treated with reverence, almost as a deity, and its activation was reserved for only the most dire of circumstances. The weapon was more than just a deterrent. It was woven into the very fabric of Krill culture. The Krill even had special ceremonies and rituals around the Tidal Disrupter. The weapon was activated only by the highest-ranking officers, and its use was always preceded by ancient chants and offerings to the sea gods. The Krill believed that the Tidal Disrupter was not merely a machine, but a conduit for the ocean's power, and it had to be treated with the utmost respect. Jen, however, seemed strangely unfazed by the weapon's fearsome reputation. From the moment she learned of its existence, she had been peppering Krill scientists with questions about its design, its energy source, and its operational parameters. The Krill, initially, were flattered by her interest. They saw it as a sign that even this strange human recognized the brilliance of Krill engineering. But as Jen's questions grew more specific, and her visits to the Tidal Disruptor facility became more frequent, a sense of unease began to creep in. She would spend hours poring over schematics, running simulations, and making copious notes in her strange, indecipherable script. The Krill scientists, accustomed to unquestioning obedience, found her relentless curiosity unnerving. One particular incident heightened their suspicions. During a tour of the Tidal Disruptor control room, Jen had casually asked if she could fiddle with the settings a bit. The Krill officer in charge, horrified by the suggestion, nearly choked on his own gills. "Fiddle with the settings?" he sputtered. But that's impossible. Only authorized personnel are allowed to adjust the disruptor's parameters." Jen, however, remained unfazed. "Yeah, I get that," she said with a shrug. "But I just had a thought about optimizing the energy flow. It's probably nothing, but I'm kinda curious." The officer, unsure how to respond to this blatant disregard for protocol, quickly ushered her out of the control room, promising to relay her concerns to the appropriate authorities. But Jen's fascination with the Tidal Disrupter only intensified. She began spending more and more time in the vicinity of the facility, observing the Krill technicians as they performed their routine maintenance checks. She would often linger near the perimeter fence, gazing at the massive structure with an expression that the Krill found difficult to decipher. Was it admiration, awe, or something far more sinister? Rumors began to circulate among the Krill ranks. Some whispered that Jen was a spy, sent by a rival aquatic species to sabotage their most powerful weapon. Others believed that she was a mad scientist, intent on harnessing the disruptor's energy for her own nefarious purposes. And a few even speculated that she was an ancient sea demon, returned to reclaim the ocean's power. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. Jen's obsession with the Tidal Disruptor was making the Krill increasingly nervous. They couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen, and they were right to be worried. Jen's experiments were about to begin, and the results would be far more disruptive than anyone could have imagined. Under the guise of scientific curiosity, Jen began her experiments. Of course, to the Krill, these weren't experiments. They were acts of blatant technological sacrilege. She'd request access to auxiliary power systems under the pretense of atmospheric readings, and then proceed to reroute energy flow in ways that made Krill engineers clutch their gills in horror. The first incident was subtle. A minor tremor registered on the disruptor's monitoring systems, a barely perceptible ripple in the ocean's currents. The Krill dismissed it as a routine fluctuation, a natural anomaly. Jen, however, simply smiled to herself, scribbling furiously in her notebook. Then came the accidental recalibration of the disruptor's targeting matrix. Suddenly, the weapon was aiming several degrees off course, threatening to unleash its devastating power on a nearby coral reef instead of a hypothetical enemy fleet. The Krill scrambled to correct the error, their anxiety levels rising with each passing moment. Jen, meanwhile, feigned ignorance, claiming she must have bumped something while admiring the intricate design. The most alarming incident occurred during a routine systems diagnostic. Jen, while assisting a team of Krill technicians, somehow managed to reverse the polarity of the disruptor's primary energy capacitor. The result was a spectacular and highly unauthorized display of sparks and crackling energy, accompanied by a deafening hum that resonated throughout the entire facility. The Krill technicians, aghast, immediately shut down the system, fearing a catastrophic meltdown. Jen, covered in soot and grinning sheepishly, apologized profusely, claiming she had misread a schematic. But the Krill were no longer buying it. This wasn't mere clumsiness. This was calculated tampering. Grand Admiral Krill, Supreme Commander of the Krill fleet, summoned Jen to his underwater headquarters. The meeting was tense, the atmosphere thick with suspicion. Krill, a towering figure with eyes as cold as the abyssal depths, regarded Jen with thinly veiled hostility. "Human," he boomed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Your experiments have caused considerable disruption to our most vital technology. Explain yourself." Jen, seated before him with an air of casual defiance, shrugged. "Look, I'm just trying to understand how this thing works," she said. "I mean, it's a pretty impressive piece of engineering, but I think it could be, better." Krill's eyes narrowed. "Better? The Tidal Disruptor is the pinnacle of Krill technology. It is not meant to be bettered by some land-dwelling mammal." "Hey, I'm just saying," Jen replied, unfazed by his anger. "There's always room for improvement. Plus, I noticed a few inefficiencies in the energy conversion process. I thought I could help you guys out." Krill slammed a fin against the table, the sound reverberating through the chamber. "Enough. Your meddling has gone on long enough. We suspect you have ulterior motives. Perhaps you are a spy sent to sabotage our weapon, or perhaps you seek to steal our technology for your own gain?" Jen sighed dramatically. "Can't a girl just be curious?" she asked. "I mean, seriously, all this suspicion is making my scales itch. And by scales, I mean skin. Because I'm a human." But Krill wasn't swayed. He had made up his mind. Jen was a threat, and she needed to be stopped before she caused any more damage. He ordered her confined to her quarters, under strict surveillance. "We will investigate your activities thoroughly," he declared. "And if we find any evidence of sabotage or espionage, you will be held accountable to the fullest extent of Krill law." As Jen was escorted away, she couldn't help but chuckle. They had no idea what she was really up to. The Krill thought she was trying to destroy their weapon, but the truth was far more pedestrian. And when they finally discovered the true nature of her experiments, they would be in for a shock that would change their society forever. The Krill didn't waste any time. A squadron of heavily armored guards, their bioluminescent eyes glowing menacingly, surrounded Jen. Grand Admiral Krill, his face a mask of barely suppressed rage, stepped forward. "Human," he stated, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "Your tampering ends now. We have reviewed the data. Your so-called experiments are nothing short of sabotage. You will tell us your intentions, or face the consequences." He punctuated his threat with a flick of his powerful tail, sending a ripple of unease through the assembled Krill. "Galactic war hangs in the balance. Speak." Jen, leaning casually against a console, raised an eyebrow. "Wow, heavy stuff. Galactic war, over a few tweaks. You guys really need to lighten up." She paused, then sighed dramatically. All right, since you insist on knowing the truth." She pushed herself off the console, facing Krill with a look of mock solemnity. "The truth is, I wasn't trying to sabotage your weapon." She let the statement hang in the air for a moment, relishing the confused looks on the Krill faces. "I was trying to improve it," Krill sputtered, his gills flapping in disbelief. "Improve it? You dare suggest that our Tidal Disrupter is in need of improvement?" He drew himself up to his full height, his shadow looming over Jen. "This is an act of war. Prepare to face the might of the Krill armada." Hold on, Jen interrupted, holding up her hands in a gesture of peace. "Before you go declaring interstellar conflict, maybe you should see what I've actually done." She gestured towards the Tidal Disrupter, now humming with a gentle, rhythmic pulse. "I've simply repurposed it." Krill, his patience wearing thin, signaled to his guards. "Seize her. She will be interrogated and we will discover the true extent of her treachery." But before the guards could move, Jen activated a small device on her wrist. The Tidal Disrupter whirred to life, its energy focusing on a single point. A moment later, a stream of dark, steaming liquid poured forth, filling the chamber with a rich, intoxicating aroma. The Krill, momentarily stunned, stared in disbelief, as Jen calmly filled a ceramic mug with the fragrant brew. "Ta-da!" she announced, holding up the mug. "A cosmic coffee maker." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Krill, his mouth agape, could only stare at the mug in Jen's hand. "Coffee?" he finally croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "You turned our Tidal Disruptor into a coffee maker?" Jen nodded, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Yep. See? I was getting really homesick for a decent cup of joe, and let's face it, the nutrient sludge you guys drink is, well, it's not exactly a party in your mouth. So, I figured, why not use a little alien ingenuity to solve a human problem?" She took a sip of her coffee, savoring the taste. Perfect. Just the right balance of acidity and bitterness. The Krill were dumbfounded. All their fears, all their suspicions, all their preparations for galactic war. It had all been for nothing. This human hadn't been trying to destroy their weapon. She had simply wanted a decent cup of coffee. Krill, still reeling from the shock, struggled to regain his composure. But the energy fluctuations, the targeting errors, the reversed polarity. What was the purpose of all that? Jen shrugged. "Dialing in the parameters, duh. You can't just expect to brew a perfect cup of coffee without a little experimentation. The energy fluctuations were me adjusting the water temperature. The targeting errors were me calibrating the bean grind. And the reversed polarity? Well, that was just a happy accident. Turns out it gives the coffee a little extra kick." The initial reaction from the Krill was a study in stunned silence. Bioluminescent eyes blinked in unison. Gills fluttered. In confusion, and powerful tails remained motionless, betraying their utter bewilderment. Grand Admiral Krill, the embodiment of Krill military might, looked utterly deflated, his mandibles slack. Then came the outrage. A wave of guttural clicks and whistles, the Krill equivalent of shouting, erupted from the ranks. Accusations of blasphemy, sacrilege, and gross misuse of military technology filled the chamber. Krill, regaining his composure, pointed a trembling appendage at Jen. "You have desecrated a sacred instrument," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Tidal Disrupter is a symbol of our power, our heritage, and you have turned it into a beverage dispenser." He paused, struggling to find the words to express his disgust. This is simply uncivilized." Jen, unfazed by the Krill's collective anger, simply shrugged and offered Krill the mug. "Come on, don't knock it till you've tried it. I promise, it'll change your life." Krill recoiled as if she'd offered him a venomous sea urchin. "I would rather face 1,000 exploding suns than ingest that concoction." But the aroma, the rich, tantalizing scent of freshly brewed coffee, was beginning to work its magic. One of the younger Krill, a low-ranking ensign named Gleep, couldn't resist his curiosity. He cautiously approached Jen, his eyes wide with apprehension. "Grand Admiral," he squeaked, "with your permission, I would like to analyze the substance." Krill, still sputtering with indignation, waved a dismissive hand. "Very well, Ensign, but do not expect me to partake in this human madness." Gleep, relieved, carefully took the mug from Jen, his tiny claws trembling slightly. He brought the mug to his olfactory sensors, inhaling deeply. His eyes widened. It smells intriguing," he stammered. He took a tentative sip, his body stiffening with anticipation. A moment later, his entire demeanor changed. His bioluminescent eyes glowed brighter, his gills pulsed rhythmically, and a blissful expression spread across his face. "Grand Admiral," he exclaimed, his voice filled with awe. This is extraordinary. I have never experienced anything like it." He took another, larger gulp, closing his eyes in ecstasy. "It is invigorating, uplifting. It is pure, unadulterated pleasure." Krill, watching Gleep's transformation, with growing curiosity, couldn't help but feel a flicker of intrigue. He had never seen a Krill react with such unbridled joy. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was something to this coffee after all. With a sigh of resignation, he approached Jen, holding out his appendage. "Very well, human. I will sample your beverage, but do not expect me to be impressed." Jen grinned and poured him a generous mug. Krill took a hesitant sip, his face a mask of skepticism. But as the coffee hit his taste receptors, his skepticism melted away. His eyes widened, his gills pulsed, and a low, guttural purr rumbled in his chest. He took another sip and another, until the mug was empty. "By the great kelp forest," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. This is incredible. I understand now. I finally understand." He looked at Jen with newfound respect. "You have shown us a new path, human. A path to enlightenment." And with that, Krill society began to change. The news of Jen's cosmic coffee spread like wildfire throughout the Xylar sector. Krill from all walks of life clamored for a taste of the magical brew. Soon, the Tidal Disrupter, once a symbol of war and destruction, was churning out coffee day and night. Training exercises were replaced with coffee tasting sessions. Strategic planning meetings were adjourned for coffee breaks. And the Krill military, once the most feared force in the galaxy, was now fueled by caffeine and a newfound appreciation for the finer things in life. Their war cries were replaced with contented sighs. Their battle strategies now revolved around securing the best coffee beans. The Krill were obsessed. Their entire culture was undergoing a seismic shift, all thanks to a human and her insatiable craving for a decent cup of coffee. The rigid structures of their militaristic society began to crumble. replaced by a more relaxed, coffee-fueled existence. And so, the Xylar sector transformed. The Krill, once paragons of militaristic discipline, became intergalactic baristas. They abandoned their warships, trading them for coffee freighters that crisscrossed the galaxy, laden with precious beans. Their once fearsome battle cries were replaced by enthusiastic endorsements of the latest single-origin blend. Gone were the days of tidal disruption and galactic conquest. Now the Krill focused on mastering the art of the perfect brew. They experimented with roasting techniques, water temperatures, and brewing methods, seeking coffee nirvana. Military academies were converted into barista schools, where young Krill learned the secrets of latte art and the nuances of espresso extraction. The Krill, surprisingly, excelled at their new vocation. Their meticulous nature and attention to detail, once applied to warfare, now produced coffee of unparalleled quality. The galaxy had never tasted anything like it. Krill coffee shops sprang up on every planet, serving a diverse range of blends and roasts to eager customers from every corner of the cosmos. Jen, meanwhile, became a galactic legend. While the Krill revered her as a sort of, coffee messiah, she mostly just enjoyed the readily available caffeine. She continued her journey through the stars, always on the lookout for new and exciting alien technology to, improve. Her reputation preceded her, and many alien civilizations greeted her with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. What seemingly harmless device would she set her sights on next? Would she turn a planet-destroying laser into a smoothie maker, a black hole generator into an ice cream machine? The possibilities, like the universe itself, were endless. One thing was certain. Wherever Jen went, a good cup of coffee or something equally unexpected was sure to follow. And as for the Tidal Disrupter, it sat proudly in the center of the Krill homeworld, polished to a gleaming sheen. It was a reminder that even the most formidable technology could be repurposed for something far more enjoyable. It was also kept under heavy guard, just in case Jen got any new ideas for improvement. After all, even a coffee-loving Krill knew better than to underestimate a human with a caffeine craving and a penchant for tinkering. The galaxy, it seemed, was a little more caffeinated and a lot more interesting, thanks to one human woman and her insatiable need for a decent cup of joe.